Hello Leeds United fans, it is Connor. We're here discussing the weekend and Leeds United in general. Bringing to you another One Leeds video. I hope you enjoyed the last 10. It's a video where we get on the last 10 minutes of every game and go through it and go through the highs, go through the lows. And I feel like the emotions for every football fan are in the last 10 minutes really. You know, where the cutthroat of football is really tumultuous and we're back here discussing Leeds so far and Leeds going into the international break. So really it's been since we've been back from international duty last time, obviously the indifferent record has just been sparked really by a loss to Southampton. I'd say that was the main takeaway from the returning Leeds United after the international break, because that was always the big game when we were back. It was us against Southampton. Southampton were on a real downturn in terms of results, and Leeds, went down there, and obviously Joe Rodon was left out. Another win under his belt at the weekend. Fantastic to see. And Leeds really struggled to get to grips with them, didn't they? Let's be honest, with that intense press. I think once again you saw at the weekend, if you just summarising Leeds United, you had a Pascal Struijk and a Joe Rodon who at the start Bristol City were really trying to press on Leeds, and I found that interesting. You had Nahki Wells, you had Bell, you had Jason Knight, a few of them really engaged on this press, and I thought very, very interesting how they've picked up on that Southampton mould. I expected a Nigel Pearson, Bristol City side, especially just a Nigel Pearson side, to be sitting in compact, deep, similar to what they did against Leicester, and really trying to, and they did it against Swansea City to an extent as well, but really trying to get in those set-piece decisions, which ultimately they did with Naismith against Leeds United after some terrible marking. But they pressed against Leeds United. They really pressed, and they, in the first sort of 15 minutes, and really prior to Nahki Wells going off, who was leading that press, they were in the game. I thought, they had the ball. They were quite progressive as well, and they were forcing Leeds into wide areas, which, when Sam Byram's naturally on his weaker side, it's not really where Leeds United want to be. You want to be on the side of, where your players are strongest, and sometimes when Sam is shown onto his left foot, which I feel Bristol City were funneling. I thought, they were able to get a few throw-ins down that side. Obviously, Sam's not as strong on that side. They were able to really get pressing on Somerville, which I thought they were doing really well, pressing high on Somerville. And ultimately, they were in the game, but I thought the high press was interesting. And I believe, looking at the games that we've played so far, after returning from the international break last time, maybe they've got that from Southampton. But overall, I think Daniel Tharker was asked midweek, is he happy with where Leeds are at the minute in terms of points total? And he said he is. He said he is happy with the points total. As we say, the shine of it is that Leeds United beat Southampton. Go down there, beat Southampton. I thought we would do that. I thought Southampton had weaknesses that we could exploit. I think the game at Ellen Road is going to be a very different game. Leeds have really made Ellen Road, which I was questioning at the start of the season. Can Leeds United make Ellen Road a fortress again? And this is the I think Leeds have now got. They've not had as good a record at home since the 09-10 season. Obviously, when we were promoted from League One, which is great to hear because, in the Premier League, Leeds' home form was tragic. Really, it was very, very difficult to get up to that level. Leeds struggled massively. So overall, I'm really happy with the home form. I'm happy with individuals. I think you've seen the emergence of Glenn Kamara. A classy individual, someone who's very good on the ball, but someone who's fallen out of love with his football a little bit at Rangers, someone who I think was pressing a move for a long time, really. And he got it to Leeds United, and there's a couple of moments in that game at the weekend where I thought, yeah, you're mustard, mate. You're mustard, you're my type of player. Really intelligent decisions, good choices on the ball, never Hollywood unless needed, never loses the ball. And his tackle percentage was incredible, I thought, at the weekend. And he, there was a couple of times where he made really quality interceptions, and it actually led to Leeds, having good counter-attacks and probably should have scored. I think there was a couple of occasions where he won the ball in the midfield. The ball broke to Somerville, and two poor decisions, really, which we saw from Somerville in that game. More positives are, Joe Rodon, I feel, is almost captain material on the pitch now. And I feel we've got to a stage with Leeds United where, I mentioned it on Twitter, where there's no more Cooper and there's no more Ayling almost having to start, which I felt like that was a pressure point for a lot of Leeds fans. If things weren't going well with the starting 11, let's rail Cooper back in, let's rail Ayling back in. And it was almost like their attributes soared because they weren't playing and the team on the pitch were doing so much better. And in all fairness to Liam Cooper, when he did feature last season, because of, Robin Koch in there and the partnership with Strout never really working, and obviously Verber, who I thought was massively overrated as it was, were almost in there. Cooper would come in and he would look sort of levels. He would look like maybe like a level above at points in terms of like composure. And Liam Cooper's very proactive, so he steps out when he's defending. The problem is, as we saw against Southampton, he steps out, but you've got to make it. Because then the other centre-back might not be reading the fact that you're going to be proactive. So then suddenly if you do that, you're out of position. You're exposed. And Liam Cooper, we saw against Southampton, is a yard or two slower even this season, in my opinion. But the reason I want to mention Liam Cooper is because what we've seen right now is we have seen Joe Rodon, who's come into the side, who's a Premier League player, who was played at Ligue 1 last season. And you've got a player in there who's just a level above all of them. And what he's done now is that's what happens when you get good players in the club, good defenders. He's brought the best out of Pascal Struijk, who has shown this season that once again, he's a very, very good defender, And it's been great for me to see that there is a no Bamford thing now, a no Ayling thing, and a no Cooper thing. And that's a big credit to Daniel Farke, because I was a little bit worried at one point that because Bamford was back fit and firing in terms of just his fitness, and he played okay the other day, I was thinking to myself, right, I'm really praying now we don't go to the default and stick Patrick Bamford up there and expect something completely different, because he's done. He's completely done. And all three of them are done. They're, at the best, they're used as rotation. And as I mentioned last season in the Premier League, they're championship players, and they're mid-championship players, if not below. I mentioned that all last season when it came to Luke Ayling and Liam Cooper, even though Cooper was performing above expectation last season. But I think overall, when you look at a 46-game championship season, Liam Cooper is very below mid. Same with Patrick Bamford. And it'll be interesting to see how Stuart Dallas is after his injury. I know he's a fan favourite, but it'll be interesting to see how he is after his injury. But for me, you've got a real dynamic, intelligent midfield there now at Leeds, and Dallas, unfortunately, in my opinion, I know there's a lot of fan favourites there, but I don't think he's going to come back from a broken leg. You don't really, in my opinion. I think it's always very difficult, especially at his age. And B, I think Bamford, probably like Ayling, Ayling, Cooper and Bamford, and Calvin Phillips and many other Leeds players, they almost have the twilight of their career because of Marcelo Bielsa. I do wonder if that's ever going to re-emerge with Stuart Dallas. So I think the old guard you see in that really move on at the minute, and I think it's well needed. We've needed it for a long time now. Joe Perreault scoring at the weekend, and that's 5 goals in 8 for him. And when you look at it, when there's all the debate and the discussion, once again at the weekend, I thought it was one of his better games, but he was largely not in the game, but an excellent strike, very Harry Kane-esque, almost shimmying it onto his left foot and not trying to get past the man, but almost using the man as a bit of a shield, firing the ball through his legs. Keeper didn't expect it. Excellent finish. And that's where Joe Perreault is very, very productive. That's where he's productive for Swansea. And that's where in that number 10 role, or that deep Harry Kane role, that deep number 9 role, you are going to see Joel Perreault very, very good. I know he's a lethal finisher, but I think you've seen a lot more productivity when it's come from him outside the area in his career. So that's when his finishing is really discussed at a high level. So a lot of positives. I hated the set piece goal, which was conceded. And I know that pissed Daniel Farke off no end, and that was really good to hear. That was really pathetic, and I don't want to see that creeping into our performances, because really, a lack of concentration there, you are looking at a 6th clean sheet for Leeds United, which is so impressive. And a lack of concentration, a stupid set-piece goal, and, unfortunately that record's gone now, which seems so tepid. I think the one criticism I have, and I've mentioned several times with Leeds United, is the lack of ruthlessness. Now, I mentioned it at the weekend, and a lot of people turned around to me and said, Connor, we've won the game. Who cares? Well, because you guys know I work on trends and patterns, and I think that, seeps its way into football. And I think trends and patterns are something that, everybody analyses, quantitatively or qualitatively. The problem is when we're going forward now, and we have had this for 4 years, we've really made it solid at the back with the addition of Joe Rodon. But I think going forward, even though I've been so impressed with Jorginho Rutter, I think he has got a bit of a howler in him. I think we've seen a couple of big misses from him this season, but he's been excellent, exceptional, and put some great finishes in. Got 5 or 6 assists, I think. So I'm not criticising him. I think there is a lot of rawness, even though he's proven very, very good at the minute in terms of his assists and his goals. Dan James' overall play, I think, has been much more elevated than we've seen in previous seasons. But I think when it comes to James, because I'm not just taking the Bristol City game into consideration. I'm looking at the Watford game. I'm looking at Sheffield Wednesday game. I'm looking at all of the games, but primarily post the last international break. I still think there is a bit of wastefulness. Well, a lot of wastefulness when it comes to Dan James. I think there is a lot of wastefulness still with Crysencio Somerville, and ultimately, even though he's quite productive, I think Joel Perreault needs to improve his involvement in game, because I still think with his attributes, if he becomes adept to this system, he can really almost slot into that number 10 role and actually play those balls that Rutter's playing and really interchange well. I don't think we've got the balance perfect yet, but the one player that stood out for me is Rutter, and I do not want to criticise, and I've always been a big fan of him, and I've never really criticised him, to be honest. I knew he'd come good, but Somerville and Dan James, even though James has done well in terms of his productivity levels this season, I think with the amount of ball they have in game and the amount of really good opportunities they get, where the 1v1 or they've got the man to take on and a really simple ball into the box, I think they're making it a little bit complicated at the minute. And I think maybe in comparison to a Leicester, for instance, who have a lot more experience in that front four, I think you're seeing that a little bit with Leeds. I think they've been a bit rash. I think the composure's a little bit off. And I think that's where we need to see a huge improvement, because I mentioned to you guys trends and patterns, but what we don't want is to see some of that feed into our general play. And in games where, Leeds have the opportunity to really increase our goal difference, which will be a big factor this season for me. I think goal difference is always massive in it, and it's a gauge of an extra point. If we're looking to catch Ipswich, who are flying at the minute, and get close to Leicester, which I think is going to be pretty impossible, to be fair, but Ipswich aren't dropping off at the minute. People were telling me 5 games ago they're going to drop off. They were telling me after 3 games they're going to drop off. So after 10, 11 games now, they've still not dropped off. That momentum seems to be very, very good for them at the minute, and McKenna seems to have a real synergy and cohesiveness with that side. If we are to catch them, goal difference needs to be a big thing. Now, Ipswich are conceding every now and again away from home, but their defensive record is pretty good, as is Leicester at the minute. So if Leeds have the opportunity, especially with all the clean sheets we're getting, to really rack up those goals at home, we have to do it. We really, really have to do it. And also it puts other teams on note that Leeds are just going to destroy them on these counter-attacks. But, you look at the amount of chances we had against Bristol City, the open goal from Rutter, the Somerville, 3 or 4 big chances. We've looked at Perreault in previous games, haven't we? We've looked at Dan James when he's not been as productive as we need. And I just think that level has to get a bit higher. That ruthlessness has to get a bit higher, because, even when Leeds are having poor games, you need your front four to step up, and the back line is really stepping up at the minute. I think at the start of the season, we all thought it'd be the front four getting the back four out of a lot of rubbish. But I think with Ampadu there, I think Kamara, when they've got that perfect almost double pivot there where one goes and one can sometimes sit, because we've seen Ampadu with Kamara and they get a little bit more further forward. I think he had 4 shots at the weekend. Needs to improve that, by the way. I think he got 1 on target. But I think overall, there's aspects that Leeds really need to improve to touch that top 2. The playoff spot at the minute, I think we're doing okay, and our points per game, the average is going to get us into those playoff places. But to increase that level, you've got 2 teams at the minute in Leicester and Ipswich who are flying, and you don't normally see that at the start of a championship season. Leicester in terms of just pulling away, and Ipswich also pulling away at the minute. and we are hoping that they drop off, but Leeds need to be composed, and Leeds need to be winning pretty much every single game now. So we've got 2 big games. When we're back, Norwich away will not be an easy task. Something to take into consideration is when you maybe look at Ipswich, have they played a lot of the tough games yet? Have they played real opponents away from home that are going to be taking points off them? I sort of earmarked Southampton, but aside from that, I think they've had a relatively decent run so far. So it'll be interesting when they face rivals Norwich away, and when they come to, obviously Ellen Road, and when they play Leicester away, home and away, obviously they're going to drop points there, and that's a big positive for Leeds. But Leeds have to, people keep telling me they're going to drop off, but Leeds have to start making that gap up as well and consistently winning games, because it seems like it's going to be a very good Championship top 2 this season, which could exceed 100 points and 100%. But big positives for Leeds, obviously Jed Spence and Willie Gnonto coming back after the international break will be absolutely huge in terms of quality. Guys, that's been it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. We're always thinking about Leeds, aren't we? But we're in the international break right now. We're going to be speaking more about Leeds on lots more videos. We're going to be getting the debrief out very, very soon. When we can all collaborate and get together. Guys, as I always say, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It's been an absolute pleasure from me. Have a good day, and we'll see you in a bit.